Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're back in War Thunder, and to celebrate the 4th of July we're going to be looking at a vehicle which was released in update 1.69. This is the T95E1. Now, I got this through the Content Partnership Program. It was very nice of the Gaijin team to give me this for a 30-day period. So I've played this for approximately 15 days, on and off, just trying it out, seeing how it is. It is a Tier 5, battle rating 8.0 tank, so one of the top vehicles, especially when we look at America. It is the highest BR. They actually have quite a collection of vehicles now at that 8.0 bracket, but they haven't graced into the 8.3, which certain other nations have, such as the T95A and the IT1 for the Russians. So to add to the plethora of 8.0 vehicles, the T95E1 was added. Now, even though personally I do have a lot of issues with Tier 5 games, I'm not going to be addressing them in this video, but just know that they range from the fact that it takes way too long to get modifications, the fact that these modifications are very important to a vehicle, ATGMs and how they work, and also just generally how the shells work as well, and how armor is kind of negated. But just understand that they will be covered in other videos, and this video will be concentrating on the T95E1. So what sets this vehicle apart from its American counterparts? Not really that much. I mean, it's a heavy, or it's classed as a medium tank, for some reason put into the heavy line, probably because we already have the M60 and the M60A1. The main big difference that you see between this tank and the other mediums at 8.0 is its gun. The gun that you find on it was the 90mm T95E1, an amazing name, and the M60s have the M68-105s on them, which are pretty good guns by themselves. They have a wonderful APDS round, followed up by a HESH round, which everybody seems to be spamming HESH, so it must be good, and then backed up by, of course, that 400mm pen of Heat FS. So all good rounds when it comes down to it. The fact that you get Heat FS and HESH in those tanks is wonderful. Very standard compared to other 8.0 vehicles such as the Leopards and the Chieftain. Moving on to the T95E1, what you get in this is a T320 round. This is APFSDS, or Armor Piercing Fin Stabilized Discarding Sabot Shot. An absolute mouthful. This penetrates up to 300mm, and the muzzle velocity at 1570 meters per second basically means that it really does fly like a bullet. Its projectile mass of 5 kilograms. There is no explosive filler. This thing is designed to be a dart. It will penetrate the enemy tank and then it will go straight out at the end. So the stuff that you get out of Heat FS and HESH, where it kind of spreads through a tank, that doesn't happen with this round, but it is very good at penetrating. 300mm is pretty much good enough to go through the majority of stuff that you'll find at Tier 5, but when we compare it to the HESH and to the Heat FS, which are the standards of Battle Rating 8.0, I would say they're probably better than it, unfortunately. But what you get from this vehicle is not just a very good gun at long range. You get a tank that kind of supports it. Even though this tank itself isn't very quick, it isn't very well armored on the sides of the rear, making it quite hard to go into engagements and maybe get flanked. What it does have going for it is gun depression and of course that muzzle velocity. This means that you can sit in areas at the back of the map and snipe people from absolutely miles away, and generally what you'll run into in this tank is T55As and Leopards. Medium tanks are very prevalent at these higher tiers just because they have the mobility, they have the artillery support, they have all of these wonderful things, and therefore they don't generally have that much armor. The T55A, if we actually look at its armor profile, it's a lot better than the Leopards. The Leopards really struggles at this tier. But even the T95A, if we look at its frontal plate, its upper glacis, you're only still looking at 190mm. Even its turrets, the only place that you really can't pen is the mantlet. Everywhere else is completely possible. So, yeah, it's as kind of as simple as that. With the T95E1, you have a sniper's gun, and you have the ability on this tank to be a sniper. So going into frontal engagements generally isn't a great thing to do. Therefore, this T95 would be good on maps like Kursk. They'll be good on maps like Hurtgen Forest, where you can sit near the windmill and stare at people. They're pretty decent on maps such as Poland, so you can sit on the east side of the map and hopefully not get attacked. Something else I want to point up is the fact that this turret has ridiculous traverse speed for what it is. 21.4 degrees per second is absolutely bonkers. I don't understand how the crew can deal with that, but you can whip it around really impressively. And one thing that is pretty standard with this heavy line of tanks, if you look at the American tanks all the way back to the M6A1, is they all have 10 degrees of gun depression, which is really useful, especially when we look at the M103 and the T95E1. It means that you can sit behind hills, you can use your armor of your, well, not really use this, but basically hide the issue armor that you have, which is basically your upper glacis and lower glacis, and mean that the enemy can only shoot your turret front. And they have to shoot it angled, because obviously you'll be, you know, depressing your gun down, so maybe it's a harder shot for them. The issue is, because of the rounds that people are using, generally if people see the front of your tank, they're just going to fire HESH at you. And what HESH does is it will basically break your gun every single time if they shoot the front of you. It will knock out your cannon breech, and it may knock out your gun as well, and maybe kill somebody else just to make it a nice day. So even though you do have a lot of mantlet armor in the form of 500 or nearly 500mm effective thickness, and then around it, you know, you have around 200 to 300. What will happen is people will just shoot you in the face with HESH, knock out your gun, and then just walk up to you and shoot you if you don't have any allies around. Also, there is the weakness of the turret ring, and also the spot, which, as I said, is just below that as well. 210mm of effective thickness may sound like quite a lot, but when you have a ton of machines which have penetrations which are nearly double that, there's not really a lot you can do. Now, we'll just look at the T95A at this moment in time. Let's see. It has Heat FS, which penetrates 390mm, and it has the APFSDS, which pens 335mm, going at 1430 meters per second. So yeah, you may look at this tank and think, ooh, it's got some pretty decent armor on it, but it's all negated by the rounds that are fired at this tier, which is very sad. But being a medium tank, the T95E1 gets access to artillery support, which is a nice add-on. Definitely something which is needed at these higher tiers. It's something that always keeps heavy tanks kind of out of the game, not having access to artillery. There are a few heavy tanks in the game, such as the Russian Matilda, which do have artillery, but generally when you look at the higher tiers and the medium tiers, the heavy tanks don't. So it's nice to see the T95E1 being labelled as a medium tank. I mean, I'm not exactly sure I would label it as a medium tank. I suppose it is only about 40 ton compared to the M60, which is 46 ton, so yeah, alright, fair enough. They've just basically stuck it after the M103 because there's too many medium tanks in the line. So you're facing enemies that you can easily penetrate, you're facing enemies that can easily penetrate you, but when it comes to speed and maneuverability, the enemy tanks have the edge. The Russian T55A or T62 plus the Leopard from the Germans are incredibly quick compared to the T95E1. And even though I haven't spaded it, or I don't know what the performance will be at its premium, it really isn't going to be up there with those Leopards and with the T55s. So the question is this better than an M60 and an M60A1? When it comes to armor, it definitely is, but as we said, armor is kind of negated at this tier by some incredible rounds. And once again, one of the things that the M60 does have, which the T95E1 doesn't have, is the fact that it's not incredibly tall. The M60s are very large tanks for what they are, and the T95 may look large, but it is very long and not very tall. The only thing that makes it look tall is the Commander's cupola, where it has a 12.7mm sticking out of it. If you negate that, then this thing actually has quite a low profile, at least compared to the M60s. So when it comes to visibility, trying to hide yourself in realistic battles behind hedges or behind little hills, then the T95 actually has the advantage. It also has a dual track drive, which is very nice. Generally sends you backwards when you use it though, but it's still okay. it's still there. But the problem with this tank is not really the tank's fault. It's just the fact that HESH exists and HeatFS exists, which can penetrate that gun manlet, which can get effective thickness of over 500, but generally sits around 350. So yeah, people are just going to pen you wherever they feel like it, and if they get unlucky, then they'll just reload faster than you. This thing has an 11-second reload. If we compare that to the other major tanks of this tier, we look at the Leopard 1, 9.3, A1A1, 9.3 once again, the T55A, which everyone is using, 11.1, so it's about the same as the T55A. We check the Chieftain, 10 seconds, so that's faster than you. And then we check the Type 74, which is at 10.8, so very, very slightly faster than you. So yeah, it's not good when it comes to the reload rate department. You basically don't beat anything, and you only draw with the Russian ones. Another thing which is an issue with the gun is it doesn't get a stabilizer. I believe the reason it doesn't get a stabilizer, or at least this is what Rex and I thought eventually, is the fact that the gun took up so much space in the turret, and they didn't want to make the turret larger like on the M103. They just left the stabilizer out. It would just be too big, especially for this 90mm gun. But overall, is this a good tank? That's basically what we're trying to ask here. If you are in the mindset of playing a very defensive role in these higher tier battles, and you don't worry about HEGMs seeing you from across the map and being able to dip rockets over the hills and kill you, then yes, it's actually pretty fun. The only two issues is the basically you can get penned everywhere, and also people will just shoot you in the commander's hatch if they can't see you behind a hill, and sometimes those shots will bounce down and kill everything inside of you, especially since there's a bunch of ammo sat next to the commander. But it's fun if you want to use its gun depression to what it should be used. It is never going to be an aggressive tank. It is too large and it is too cumbersome. Even though it does have the great rotation speed, the fact that you can't trade effectively with targets that you see, since the fact that the majority of them will reload faster than you, yeah, it's really, really annoying to use, to be quite honest. And I think this may be just down to the fact that, for me personally, I don't particularly enjoy Tier 5 ground battles just because of the stuff I listed before, but I will make videos on all of those points, even though I have in the past. I think it's time for an update on them. But anyway, this is the T95E1. If I was somebody who wanted to set up an 8.0 lineup, would I use it? Well, you're basically choosing between this and the M60. And well, I would say go for the M60, because you get access to the M60A1, and also it has that slightly better reload rate. The vertical guidance is 9 degrees down instead of 10, so not a massive difference. Even though the M60 is taller, as long as you're not using it in the role that I talked about, it generally doesn't matter too much. It is quicker off the mark, it has much better acceleration. than the T95E1. And when we look at the other slots, well, you're going to be running the Sheridan or the M60A2, which will probably be running the M60A2, and the M163. So your medium tanks, either the M60 or the T95, then you're running the M163 and the M60A2, and then maybe a B57 and an F2H. That would be my standard lineup. But yeah, I would probably take the M60 over this bad boy. I haven't really enjoyed my time in it, but as I said, I'm not exactly sure that's down to the tank. It might just be down to me in Tier 5 battles. I hope you all have a great Independence Day and a 4th of July. And, well, I'll see you tomorrow.